G'day folks, this is Dragon from Aussie Survival, in conjunction with Survival HQ. On the Survival HQ forum in the last week or so, there's been some discussion about the use of UHF radios in disaster or emergency situations. Now I can only speak from my experience. Yes, I do consider them essential, and I have used them in emergency and disaster situations. Over 10 years ago in Australia, pretty much low-end cost handheld radios like these were very popular. This one has a maximum output of about half a watt. Now I'm not going to go into brands and so on and all the rest of it. What I did find with this particular type of radio, and many of them were very similar, was that yes, they take AA or AAA batteries. And this particular one, it took 3 AAA batteries. Even though it worked at half a watt, it was quite heavy on power consumption on the batteries. So what I did was put an adapter pack on the back that took AA batteries, and that extended the battery life of the radio. So I got to thinking, okay, I need better radios. One that I can charge in a vehicle, 2 that has a longer battery life, and 3 that are more rugged, particularly for a bush environment and that type of thing. So bearing in mind, as I said, this is over 10 years ago. There are a lot of handheld radios, or walkie-talkies if you want to call them that, out there. Different brands. I'm not going to say which is better or which is not. There's so many more brands coming on the market, and you're going to have to look up the reviews on them. But initially, over 10 years ago, this particular brand I've got was pretty well much very popular on the market. Now, the first one I bought was this one. It's a UHF handheld radio or walkie-talkie. Maximum output is 5 watts, which is legal. This is for the UHF CB in Australia, Citizens Band. It has a nickel metal hydride battery pack on the back, which detaches like that. You can get spare battery packs for them for about $15 or $16 Australian, depending on the exchange rates. And when you charge these, you don't have to put the whole radio in there. If you've got a spare battery, it just slots in there, and while you've got the new charged battery on there, this one's charging. This one is manually programmable. In other words, you can program your own frequencies into the radio. It also has 2 power settings, 1 watt or 5 watts. 5 watts being the maximum legal limit for the Australian UHF CB radios. I'm not going to go too much into how to program this radio, because if you buy a handheld or walkie-talkie, you get an instruction manual with it. It has quite a number of features on it, but what I was looking for was a radio that I could charge off the vehicle 12-volt system if I was out in the bush and I need to recharge battery packs, and also manually programmable too, so I can program the CB frequencies into the radio, and also if any frequencies outside the CB band that require a license from the ACMA, that's the Australian Federal Authority, part and parcel of looking after the RF spectrum in Australia, then I could program the license frequency also into this radio. This has 99 channel capability, and quite a few features on it. Set your own squelch. There's no squelch knob on here, that's on-off volume. And through programming on your front panel keypad here, you can set your squelch, amongst other features on there. The charging docking station that comes with them, okay, comes with 240 volt AC Australian to 12 volt DC output to the docking station, charging station, which sits in the back like that. Plug that into your power point. Little LED indicator on the front there. When the battery is low or down, it's red. When the battery is fully charged, it turns green. When you switch it on, you get a battery indication level there, and the maximum charge on this is about 7.2 volts. Remember, this is nickel metal hydride battery packs. That noise you just heard then, I'm just picking up a very faint signal from a repeater around here, channel 7. So, next question was, when I was looking up specifications on these radios, can I charge them in a vehicle situation? You can, on some of them, and you've really got to look at the specs on them. This is the adapter cord that goes with both docking stations, and I'll get onto this one in a minute. All that does is plug into the back of the docking station. You've got to have that in the vehicle with you, and it plugs into a cigarette lighter. 12 volt DC system in your vehicle, and it will charge the battery. Have used it, very successful. Some vehicles may not have cigarette lighters in them, or they may have USB ports. The ones that don't have cigarette lighters in them, you can buy things like this, like that, or hardwired into the vehicle system, or if the vehicle is stationary, you can just plug that in like that and hook it onto your vehicle 12 volt battery. Very easy. That's what I was looking for, and believe me, I have used that quite extensively on road trips and in the bush where I've had to recharge batteries. Now, this other one here, this was a later model that came out, and this is a lithium ion pack radio. You can see the size difference there. That was one of the first models. This is a later model. You can see the size difference. Lithium ion pack has a lot more power capability. Virtually the keypad function on this is basically the same as that as far as programming goes, on off. Your buttons here for channel up and down, channels 1 to 40, or of recent channels 1 to 80. I can program the 80 UHF CB channels into these radios because of the frequency bandwidth of these radios. This one also has an LED light on the top of it that can be switched on via a function on one of these keypad switches here. Battery pack, again, just a simple disassemble like that. Spare battery, slot it in there, put your fully charged battery on there. While that one's charging, you've still got use to the radio if you want spare battery. The battery packs for these cost around about $16 or $17 Australian, depending on exchange rates. This one is a particularly more compact size than this one. I use these most of the time now and keep these as spare. And give you some idea, it can fit into a shirt pocket, just like that. That's how big it is. A few other things, pocket clips, clip it into your pocket. The antenna screws off. If you need to take it off or you need to replace it, take note of the connector arrangement on there. Now you can get adapters that will fit on some of these radios, and it's something you've got to look into to get the right adapters. These can be connected to external antennas, 5 watts. This is also 5 watts maximum output, and you can also have a 1 watt minimum setting on it, just through programming it. And you screw these on, be very gentle with them. It's very easy to cross thread it and finger tight. These radios are what they say weatherproof, or weather resistant I should say. In other words, they don't mind being a little bit wet or damp, like in wet clothing and stuff like that. You drop it in a bucket of water, it's going to stop working, pure and simple as that. These little pouches I got picked up from a closing down sale a long time ago, and these radios fit inside there with a spare battery. There's a spare battery in the compartment in the back, and you can hook it up to your clothing, your belt, backpack if you want to. I prefer to have it somewhere where it's easy for me to reach the on-off switch control on it. Also, I've noted too, there's a keypad lock function on both radios. Now, I've had problems initially with these radios when I was using them in the bush in my pocket. If I bumped up against something and activated one of the function keys on the manual keypad here, it would change the function of the radio or change channel, whichever the case may be. So there's a keypad lock function on these radios so that that doesn't happen accidentally. Alright, we'll go on to some accessories. We've done the power. Now some accessories you can get with these radios. Okay, for this radio here and for this radio here, you can get what they call speaker mics, and what that does, clips into the side there where those two holes are. Make sure that they're compatible with whatever radio you've got, the plug connection on them, and you can have this hanging off your belt, in your backpack or whatever, very much like the police do, and have this up here somewhere. And what that is a speaker mic. Okay, push to talk, transmit, let go, and when you get a reply back you hear it on the same item. Another one I've got is, initially I tried these, I did use them in the bush. Got a boom mic on it, just goes over your head like this, only for one ear, and flick that down, and it also plugs into the ports on the radio. Again, make sure that it's compatible with the radio, because these are different for different radios. In the bush I found this a bit of a problem, particularly working through thick bush, walking and that sort of thing. Did work, but it was a bit of a problem. Some of these radios also have Vox functions on them, what they call voice operated transmission. There is a problem with that in some cases, and it has happened when you've got these plugged in, or you're just using the simple radio as it is, push to talk on the side normally. But if you're using a Vox function, and I have heard it happen, I saw it happen once where somebody had that sitting on the front seat of their vehicle, voice operated transmission. In other words, it requires voice or noise to operate the transmit on the radio. The vehicle noise, road noise inside the vehicle actually activated through the Vox the radio, so it jammed the channel for other vehicles that were out on that particular trip. So that's something to be aware of about Vox. A good idea, but you've got to be aware that depending on the sensitivity of them, just simple vehicle noise, road noise inside the vehicles, or even some external noise which is loud enough to activate it, will activate the transmit on this, even though you're not using it, and it will jam the channel. Alrighty, so the next one I went along with was this, and I found this far better in the bush environment and far safer to use if you're using this as a primary or secondary radio in a vehicle. And what it is basically, again, you've got your plug, goes into sockets on the side of the radio, which performs a function of audio output and microphone. And what we have here is an acoustic attachment, loops over your ear, plugs into your ear, a clip, you can clip it onto your clothing somewhere, Make sure that this stays in place, and that's your microphone there. Got a little clip on it, little button, you're talking to that. Now, there are heavy duty ones. I've got heavy duty ones. These are a light duty one. The idea being is that goes in the ear, just loops over the ear like that. Plug it in, secure it with this clip on your collar somewhere, and the microphone part of it, clip on the back of it, can go anywhere on your clothing, your lapel, so you can just push to talk, turn your head sideways and talk into it. Very good idea. They are a good idea, particularly if you're out in the bush, hunting, whatever the case may be, and you've got one of these handheld radios in emergency situations and so on like that, where you don't want the radio blaring away for everybody else to hear. Plug that in, cuts out the audio on the speaker on the radio itself, and it comes through this. Another thing to remember too is that the biggest power consumption on these radios is naturally your transmit. You hit the transmit button, 5 watts. It's a huge drain on your battery pack. But also with audio, if you're normally using a radio like that, you turn your audio up. The higher it is, the higher the level, the more power is draining out of the battery, even just on standby without transmit. Now, if I set the volume to that, plug that in and use it, and somebody talks on it, it's going to do some damage to your ear. By using these, you can turn down the volume and can conserve battery power. So those are the two main power consumptions problems on these radios, is your transmit and your audio level. Now, standby time. What I mean by standby time is you turn the radio on and you're listening. You're not transmitting, you're listening. This one, the early model, probably 24 hours. This one, with the lithium ion pack, I can get 36 to 48 hours out of it, just on standby listening mode only. So the question remains, are these good survival items to have? In natural disasters, from my own experience, yes they are. 2.5 years ago, as we had natural disasters in our area, the power grid failed, and the civilian communications grid, hardline, and the mobile or cell phone, if you want to call it that, any wireless communications, internet, so on, failed. The only means of communications I had with the outside world to find out what was going on around the place, situational awareness they call it, was via my radio comm system, one of them being the UHF CB. So Vorpal, if you're watching this, for me, yes, I do consider them an essential survival item, whether you're living in an urban area or you're out in the bush doing recreational activities or whatever the case may be. And Tihape was back that up because from the post he made on that particular topic, he uses them in the bush too. Now it comes down to repeaters. Okay. These radios at the moment are programmed for 40 channels. I haven't programmed them for the new 80 channel CB here in Australia, which was approved about 12 to 18 months ago by the ACMA. Repeaters. On these, on the Australian system, you've got repeaters channels 1 to 8. Channel 5 is the emergency repeater. The uplink frequencies or channels, when you program these radios, it automatically transmits on an upper channel or frequency. For argument's sake, if I want to make an emergency call on channel 5 to a channel 5 repeater, if there's one in the area, you switch it on, change the channel to channel 5, and you'll find that's channel 5 there. Push to talk button when you transmit. When you finish transmitting, just take your finger away from it so the other person can answer you. and also with your squelch setting in there, you don't want to hear that noise all the time. Okay, that's what's this button on the side here bypasses the squelch setting inside the radio. That's picking up a fringed signal off the channel 5 repeater. So squelch is another thing to consider. It can be used to pick up weak signals, as was the case in. It was picking up a very weak signal at one of the repeaters around here. Or you can bypass it all the time, but as I said, you've got this noise going all the time and it's bloody annoying. But it can be used to listen into weaker signals. The uplinks for the repeater channels 1 to 8 are channels 31 to 38. In other words, in this case here, when I press channel 20, channel 5, the emergency channel, it was actually transmitting on channel 35. That's your uplink to your repeater. The repeater then picks up the signal and retrans the signal back on the channel 5 frequency. So you can see you've got an uplink of channel 30-35 to the repeater. The repeater transmits back to your radio, your receive side of your radio on channel 5. Channels 1 to 8 are the repeater channels. Channels 31 to 38 are the uplink frequencies or channels to the repeaters. And that is what they are used for. Do not use them for point-to-point or simplex communications. That means simplex, say if I turn this to channel 9, turn this to channel 9, I can talk point-to-point on that radio. A bit more further apart, of course. Do not sit on one of the uplink frequencies and use it as a simplex form of communications, because it could interfere with one of the repeater uplinks around the area. And similarly with the channels 1 to 8, some radios you can function in the program in there as simplex or duplex. They are duplex. It's best not to use them as simplex because you could be interfering with the receive or the downlink from a repeater if someone else is using that particular channel for the repeater. So that's pretty well it. I think that covers the very basics of it. Transmit time, how long do you get out of the battery? Well, that depends how many times you transmit. Keep the messages short. It helps to conserve your battery life. Be aware that when you use one of these, that everybody else on the same channel can hear you. So be very careful about what you say with regarding to any personal information, names, vehicle registrations, and the list goes on. You can have your own call signs or use a false name, but be very careful what you say on this channel, because anybody else that is on the same channel can hear every word you're saying if they're in range. Repeaters can extend the range of these quite considerably. One repeater I use has a coverage of several hundred square kilometres, depending where the repeater is. Some repeaters are privately owned, some are commercially owned, and in some areas on the last road trip I did in New South Wales, Channel 5, it was signposted on the side of the road actually, Channel 5 was not the emergency repeater. They designated another channel as emergency repeater. Now, people say, well, why use radios? It's old stuff, who cares? It's Noah's Ark stuff. Don't forget emergency services use radios in all their forms and organisations. Also, secondly, in my area, and this can happen in natural disasters, but even today, mobile and cell phone communications are very spotty, particularly in this area. I've got to stand in a certain part of my house to get mobile reception. On the roads around my area, in some areas there's no mobile reception at all, none, zip, nada, that's it. But if an emergency comes up or you're working to a base station, you can use one of these. In fact, in my area, I get better coverage with my complete communications setup. This is only one band I use, than I can with a mobile phone. So that's something else to consider. But certainly from a survival point of view, and I have experienced, the latest being about 2.5 years ago, the civilian infrastructure falls apart. UHF radios, yes, they do have a limited range, but they can certainly help you with what's going on around the place with situational awareness and so on. Also for recreational activities, if you're splitting up into parties and that's so on, you want to know where they are, and all the rest of the stuff, organise meeting points or RVs or whatever the case may be. You can use these to talk to the other part if there's some distance away. Alright, I hope that hasn't gone too long, but that's basically it. And again, yes, it's modern technology, and I've mentioned before that I believe in the integration of old skills, modern technology in survival situations. And to me, radio communications has proved itself time and time again, either in dry runs, mock runs, practice runs, and in real situations, disasters, emergencies, and so on. So I hope that answers some questions for people on the forum who've made inquiries about it. The last thing I've got to say is that if you buy these radios in Australia, some of them are pre-programmed to the Australian UHF CB. You can get them at 1 watt, half watt, some of them 2 watts, maximum 5 watts. If you're buying them from overseas, be aware that the frequency range of handheld radios vary from country to country. For Australia, you're looking at a frequency range of somewhere between about 400, 410 megahertz up to 480. Most important, because the centre frequency that the Australian UHF CB is centred around is 477 megahertz. So if you buy a radio, the upper frequency limit is below that, you won't get all CB channels on there. And certainly with 480 megahertz, the upper limit, which is suited for Australian UHF CB, you can get them where you can program the new 80 channel listing. By the way, no license required for these. Any frequencies outside UHF CB, you need a license. Go look up the ACMA website to find out details on that. Okay folks, that wraps it up. Hope it provides you some information. If you have any more inquiries, please, they're welcome. That's the way I've gone. I looked at the situation where if I'm out in the bush, batteries go flat, it doesn't matter whether it's these type or the battery packs on these. What I wanted ideally was to be able to charge these radio battery packs from a vehicle or a solar battery, 12-volt solar battery system with a regulator on it, so they can be recharged in the bush. You don't have to worry about these types of batteries, the AAAs and AA's, if they go flat, finding somewhere to store them in your pack and not throwing them away in the bush or anything like that. So that's the way that is. Alright folks, that wraps it up. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to answered some questions. If you have any more questions, they're most welcome. Thank you.